Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 353 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, I'm not really asked you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. We are in a new day when we talk about college sports, college football, and to explain what's going on with this Pac-12 thing, let me first explain how conferences make money. Conferences make money usually by two ways. They make money by athletics and by academics. Now, when we talk about some of the bigger schools and we talk about some of the bigger conferences, their money is predicated on their major sport. What do I mean by that? Let's look at the ACC. While yes, the ACC has Clemson, the ACC makes most of their athletic money through basketball. North Carolina, Duke, NC State, Clemson. They make most of their money through basketball. The same is completely opposite when we talk about the SEC. The SEC makes most of their money from football. Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Georgia. When we talk about this Pac-12 situation, we are seeing the end of the Pac-12. And the reason why, if you look at the Pac-12 currently, you have USC, Utah, Washington, Oregon State, UCLA, Washington State, Arizona, California, Arizona State, Stanford, and Colorado. The news broke yesterday that the Pac-12 was unable to, get a deal done with Oregon and Washington State, and both teams are now going to be going to the Big Ten. This comes off the backs, I think, a day before that Arizona will be going to the Big Ten, which also comes off the heels probably a week or two ago when Colorado is going to the Big 12, I believe. And, of course, last year we learned that as USC and UCLA are going to the Big Ten, I believe. Here's the thing, man. I talked about this when we heard about USC and UCLA. When your flagship schools or when your money-making schools leave your conference, that pretty much starts the clock on your imminent end. You see, the Pac-12 can survive or could have survived if a Washington State, with UCLA and USC leaving, they could have survived with Washington staying, with Oregon staying, with Colorado staying, especially when you see Colorado and Deion Sanders and the resurgence of that school in Arizona. But now, bro, think about this. Now I understand winning solves a lot of things as well. And recent success could change this. And while yes, I understand that maybe a couple years ago, the Washington was in the college football playoffs and Oregon ultimately made it to a national championship. I think the inaugural college football playoffs, Oregon met Ohio State in the national championship. However, both teams, Washington got destroyed. I believe it was by Alabama. They got destroyed, and Oregon ultimately lost. We talk about the history of the Pac-12, and we talk about the history of USC. USC used to be a powerhouse, of course. Yeah, I understand now you have Caleb Williams and everything, but before Caleb Williams, it was mighty bleak for USC. After, of course, you had Matt Leinart and you had Troy Polamalu, you had Reggie Bush. I understand those days, but those days are long gone. I understand Chip Kelly kind of rejuvenated UCLA, but UCLA hasn't been good for a while either. I talked about this before, and you're going to see super conference. We're pretty much seeing two super conferences at this point. Right now, you have the the Pac, or you have the Big Ten, and you have SEC. Now, yes, you have the Big 12 and you have the ACC, but you're pretty much going to see 4 major conferences now. I'm interested to see what happens to like the Sun Belt Conference or what happens to the MEAC Conference. I'm interested because it's like the Pac-12. While yes, it wasn't as successful as other conferences, it is a major conference. But I think we have seen the end of the Pac-12 very soon, because there's no way that like Utah and Oregon State and Washington State and Cal and Arizona, there's no way that those schools can maintain. And now I will say this. There are schools like Cincinnati. There's schools like maybe USF. There's other schools that could possibly try to join the Pac-12, but none of those schools are or make the same amount of money or bring in the same amount of money or have the same gravitas, if you will, as a USC, as an Oregon, as a UCLA. And at this point right now, because of Deion Sanders, as a Colorado. We're seeing a change in college football, man. We're seeing a change in sports in general. I understand that it is I guess, for lack of a better term, a scary time, because it's like, do you really want parity? Is a thing, right? And parity is a thing that a lot of people claim that they want and claim that they like. I don't know how much parity you're going to get outside of the conferences or whatever. I don't know how much parity you're going to get when most of the good teams are in 2 different conferences, which is why I believe that we're going to get super conferences. I think ACC basketball makes too much money and makes enough money that the ACC can survive, especially with Clemson. Now, if Clemson leaves, that's a whole different conversation. Because another thing that we know is basketball programs and football programs are completely different. Yes, they can be in the same school, like, North Carolina basketball and football are obviously the same school, but for a perfect example, Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame in basketball is part of the ACC. Notre Dame in football is an independent. So, this is a new day, man. This is a new day in college football. And I understand that the Pac-12 was, or the president of the Pac-12, because every conference also has its own president. The president of the Pac-12, I think that they were trying to roll out a subscription-based thing, but nobody is going to pay for a subscription to see Utah against Arizona State at 10:30 at night on the East Coast. Like, don't get me wrong. That's no offense to those schools, but you're already struggling, even with the big schools, even with Oregon. I'm an Oregon fan mainly because of the jerseys, but I'm an Oregon fan. You know how tough it is to work a regular 9 to 5, and you have to stay up till 10:30 in the morning to watch. 10:30 at night to start a college football game. Do you understand how long college football games are? The Pac-12 was already fighting or battling against itself when we look at the teams and their most popular teams and where they're located in the United States. You're automatically going to have late games. That's why a lot the viewership for Oregon or USC, while they're high for the Pac-12, they're not high for college football, because you're losing an entire coast because of how late these games are. And now that they're leaving, it's like, what is the draw? What would bring a school? What would make a school want to leave their conference to go to the Pac-12? Now that all of your money-making schools, because and that's another thing. all the schools in the conference make money off each other. So while yes, Colorado was 1-8 or 1-11 last year, they still make a lot of money because you had an 8-1 school. Like you, the success of your conference also makes you money. That's not going to be the case anymore when you're. I mean, oof. Yeah, man. We have. I don't know what's going to happen, obviously, but all I know is that I believe when I listen to people talk. And when I see, it feels like the writing's on the wall for the Pac-12. And it feels like the writing has been on the wall for the Pac-12 ever since we heard of USC and UCLA jumping ship to go to the Big Ten. Once that started, I believe that started the countdown. And I think the nail in the coffin happened yesterday with Oregon and Washington and Arizona all pretty much leaving the conference. It's a new day in college football, and unfortunately, it feels like it is the end of the Pac-12 because I don't see how that conference survives. Or let me say this. I can see the Pac-12 surviving. I can see the Pac-12 surviving and flourishing. But I don't see it as a major conference anymore. It's not. There's no way that you can consider the Pac-12 a Power 5 conference. Now, yes, I can see the Pac-12 kind of moving and going to like the MEAC or not going, but operating as maybe like the Sun Belt Conference, or maybe, like I said, the MEAC Conference, or maybe the Mount West Conference. But I think this is the last days of the Pac-12 being considered a, quote, Power 5 conference. So let's move forward. Football is back. Now, no, nobody really cares about the Hall of Fame game. The Hall of Fame game is mainly for, obviously, the new inductees or the soon-to-be inductees in the Hall of Fame, and to showcase them. I mean, DeMarcus Ware did the national anthem for some reason. But, yeah, the Hall of Fame game signifies the start of football. Now, yes, you still have it's pretty much the start of the preseason, but you know, we have OTAs, we have training camps, we have media days, but the Hall of Fame game is the first time that two teams put on actual pads and play an actual game. I'm not going to call it a meaningful game, but play an actual game. So that means football is here, and it's an interesting time for people, man. People love football. I know we know this, obviously, being a sports fan, but football is people's lives. I mean, I know people personally that was sports betting, because as we know, sports betting is kind of still a new concept that makes a lot of people money, obviously. And I know people that were sports betting the Hall of Fame game, which is essentially the first NFL preseason game of the season. So it's crazy. But this Hall of Fame game was different. I don't need to talk about the game. I don't need to talk about, you know, it was Cleveland Browns and the Jets. I don't need to talk about the outcome of the game. This Hall of Fame game was different because of one person. And that one person was Aaron Rodgers. And this is what I mean. Let me explain. Now, yes, no starters played outside of maybe a few, but Aaron Rodgers didn't play. I don't think any starters on the defense of the Jets played. I know Deshaun Watson didn't play, and I don't think really any of the starters for the Browns played either. But this game was all about Aaron Rodgers, and it wasn't maybe what you think. we know who Aaron Rodgers is. We know what he's accomplished in Green Bay. We know that he is considered one of the most talented and arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. We also know that when somebody switches teams, when somebody moves from one location to another, you as a team, you as the organization that they're going to, want the transition to be as seamless as possible, especially when we talk about a great as historically great as Aaron Rodgers. So you want to make sure the running backs and that department is good. Well, you have Breece Hall, and reports are saying that you can possibly get Dalvin Cook. You want to make sure that the wide receiver core is good. I mean, the Jets have one of the best wide receiver core when we talk about Garrett Wilson and the piece that they have. Allen Lazard, he came from Green Bay. You want to make sure the defense is right. With Sauce Gardner, the Jets have one of the best, if not the best, defense in football. You can kind of rival their defense right now with at least on paper, with possibly the 49ers, but the Jets have an incredible defense. So it seems like you have everything that you want outside of the offensive line. And that is the biggest hindrance that the Jets had before this Aaron Rodgers move. And maybe even after this Aaron Rodgers move. You want to make sure that, especially a quarterback that is in his 40s, especially a quarterback that is not the most mobile, and honestly, at his age, doesn't want to be the most mobile, and a quarterback that has been hit over 1,000 times in his career, you don't want to go from a place. You want to when you're going to a new place, you want new things. Like I know a lot of people that move, right? When you move, usually people buy new furniture because they want their new thing to be new. They want their new house, their new apartment, their new anything. They want that to be new. So they usually buy new furniture. They usually get a new bed. They don't really want the remnants of the old place in their new space. That's the same thing that you have when we're talking about Aaron Rodgers. You don't want to go to Green Bay, or you want to go from Green Bay to the Jets and deal with the same problems that you had. One of the biggest problems that the Green Bay Packers suffered from was injuries as far as the offensive line. Bakhtiari was always hurt, and that really put a hindrance, I think, on the season last year. Not just Bakhtiari, but the entire offensive line. So why am I saying all this? Where are you going, Jalen? I got you. I said this Hall of Fame game was different than others because this Hall of Fame game, I needed to see one person. I didn't care about Zach Wilson looking the same exact way he did last year. I didn't care about anybody on the Cleveland Browns. That's only because a lot of these players, the Hall of Fame game and the preseason in general is pretty much for players, or like the first few preseason games is for players that are on the fence that may not make the cut, to see, how you fare and who's going to make the cut, who's not. So you're not really going to get a good brand of football, nor are you really going to get You're going to get players playing hard, obviously, because they're playing for their football lives, but you're not going to get a sense of what your team is going to look like. So there's no point of talking about the Hall of Fame game outside of one player. I talked about everything with Aaron Rodgers and coming to a new situation and the offensive line. The player that I wanted to see how they would fare is Mekhi Becton. Mekhi Becton is arguably the second most important player for the Jets. And yes, I understand who's on the Jets. I understand, you have one of the best defenders or defensive players in the NFL in Sauce Gardner. I also understand, some of the acquisitions that you got, but the second most important player for the Green Bay Packers is Mekhi Becton. And I think that should terrify. That's like Green Bay Packers. I meant New York Jets. I apologize. The second most important player for the New York Jets is Mekhi Becton. And that should terrify Jets fans. And that should terrify Jets fans because Mekhi Becton has struggled mightily with staying healthy. He has all the tools, right? He has all the tools when we talk about size, speed, strength. He has all the tools to be one of the best offensive linemen in football. And if he is right, then and he can stay healthy, then he is one of the best offensive linemen in football. And the Green Bay Packers definitely have one of the best offensive linemen or offensive lines in football because you still have Dwayne Brown. However, asking or expecting Mekhi Becton to be healthy for an entire season is almost like expecting Kawhi Leonard to play all 82 games. Or expecting someone like Anthony Davis to not get injured. As unfortunate as that is, Anthony Davis does not have a history of staying healthy, at least a recent history of staying healthy. Kawhi Leonard, since being hurt or since twisting his ankle for the Spurs, he has not had a history of playing an entire season. I wanted to see how Mekhi Becton was going to look. I know he lost weight, and he got serious about his fitness and got serious about his eating and kind of like Zion Williamson. I think that his lack of diet or his lack of nutrition and poor diet had a direct impact on his health as far as injuries and everything. So I wanted to see. He did look really good. He looked slimmer. I think he's still over 300 pounds, but he's still slimmer, and he's an offensive lineman, so, But I wanted to see what he looked like I wanted to see what he looked like in the Hall of Fame game. He should have dominated. You're playing against players that 9 times out of 10 will not make an NFL roster. Or if they do make the NFL roster, they're not going to play major minutes. So, and you, who is Mekhi Becton, you are going to be very important for the New York Jets. So I wanted to see how he looked, and he did not disappoint. He looked incredible. He dominated, and he looked like the best player on the field the entire night for both teams. And I think that's all I need. I know he played like 15, 16 snaps, so that's all I needed to see. I needed to see how he moved. I needed to see how he looked. I needed to see what he looked like with his new, with his new weight. I need to see what he looked like in pads. Now, again, I understand it's a Hall of Fame game. I understand that, like I just said, it's very hard banking on a player to stay healthy when they have never or they haven't had a history of staying healthy. Okay, hell, we're gonna talk. Let me get to that. I'll get to that later. I was pleasantly surprised what I saw from Mekhi Becton, and I expect Jets fans to be happy with what they saw as well. The question is, and the hope is that he can stay healthy for the entire season, which is a tall task, seeing as though he has not been able to do that. Because if he does, I am going down to saying that Mekhi Becton is the second most important player for the New York Jets. Because you have a 40-year-old quarterback that's not the most mobile. You don't want him getting hit. And you need a good offensive line. And that was one of the biggest problems last year with the Jets. The offensive line was terrible. Why is that? Because Mekhi Becton was hurt. If he's there, you're good. If he's not, I don't see the Jets as a realistic Super Bowl contender. That's how good he is. That's how good he can be. And that's how important he is. If he is healthy, the Jets are legit Super Bowl contenders. If he's not, even with Aaron Rodgers, even with all the pieces that they have, if Mekhi Becton is not healthy, I don't think the Jets have a shot of making the Super Bowl. Again, I understand it's the Hall of Fame game, but I just need to see one player, and he looked good. So we'll see. Let's move forward. And if, like I said, the Hall of Fame game pretty much means football is coming and football is here. You know, I understand that the regular season isn't here. I think the regular season starts September 10th, I believe, or 11th. But I don't think it's September 11th. I think it's September 7th. But with the that means that it's time for me to break down every division, break down. We have 8 divisions in football, and I'm going to break every single one of them down. And I'm going to start from, to me, I don't want to say the worst to best, but I'm going to start with the NFC South. Now, the NFC South, to me, is the prime example of the phrase, it's a quarterback-driven league. Now, I know that I kind of scoffed at that, and I know that I kind of pushed back on that when we talked about Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. But what do I mean, or how am I describing that when we talk about the NFC South? Now, the NFC South has 4 teams that, if you just look at the teams, have solid pieces. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons, and the New Orlean Saints. If you look at their rosters, if you look at all of their rosters, they have really good rosters. But there's a reason why this division is considered one of the worst divisions in football going into this year. Now, things can change, obviously. All this is predictions or whatever, but there's a reason why this division is considered one of, if not the worst division in football. It's because of the quarterback play. Let's start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Trust me, this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team is not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that we saw just a couple years ago with. In fact, let me change that. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers team is the same Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that we saw just a couple years ago, except for one glaring difference. Tom Brady is not the quarterback. You still have Shaq Barrett. You still have Levante David. You still have Carlton Davis. You still have Jamel Dean. You still have Chase Edmonds. You still have Mike Evans, who is considered, who I think I did a one of my most famous videos, or popular, let me say, videos, is when I was talking about who is currently in the Hall of Fame, and damn near everyone. First of all, let me say I appreciate everyone that has commented on that reel or commented on the video. That video is damn near at 100K as far as views on YouTube, not YouTube, on Instagram. And I appreciate every single person that's telling me how wrong I am or people that I'm leaving out. I appreciate you guys. But one name that was definitely prevalent, and one name that almost everyone has said, is Mike Evans, and how he's one of the most underrated players in football, seeing as though he's one of the most accomplished and successful players. It's just he doesn't get the recognition. So they still have Mike Evans. They still have Chris Godwin. The difference is, like I said, they don't have Tom Brady. They are in a quarterback battle between Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask, I think. Let me tell you something. And I've heard this this take. People are saying that if Baker Mayfield does not win the starting quarterback position against Kyle Trask, that he should retire. I'm never going to say that someone should retire. I'm never going to say that somebody should just end their career before they're ready to. I mean, obviously not my career. It's yours. So you do what you want. But what I will say is this. Baker Mayfield is a former number 1 overall pick. And he's been in the league. This would be, year 6 for him? I don't know. I understand the life expectancy of a football player. Or when we talk about life, football life is very short. I think it's like 2 to 2.5 years or something like that for a football player. That life expectancy is not indicative of a number 1 overall pick. I do believe that when you look at that draft, when you look at the draft Baker Mayfield, I do believe that he was drastically over or picked too high. I don't think he was ever a number 1 overall pick potential or number 1 overall pick talent. Never. Even he was one of the best Oklahoma quarterbacks they've had. But I still, when we talk about the NFL and translating from the NFL, for instance, let me give you a great example. Tim Tebow is considered one of the greatest college football quarterbacks we've ever seen. What he did at Florida, I think he won 2 national championships. He is considered one of the greatest college football quarterbacks of all time. But there's a reason why, when you look at his draft evaluation, when you look at his draft evaluation, a lot of people did not have him succeeding in the NFL. Now, I understand that draft evaluations can drastically be wrong, i.e., there's a incredible documentary about Steph Curry and how his draft evaluation obviously was wrong when we talk about the final product. But Tim Tebow's draft evaluation pretty much did not have him succeeding in the league. And if it wasn't for a game against the Steelers, Tim Tebow really didn't do anything in the NFL. Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, was never a number 1 overall pick talent. And while, yes, he had a good rookie year, I think that being a number 1 overall pick and the rookie year kind of skewed people's or kind of blinded people to the fact or to the true Baker Mayfield. The Baker Mayfield that is not a number 1 overall, or should not have been a number 1 overall pick. The Baker Mayfield that's not the most accurate quarterback. The Baker Mayfield that doesn't make the best decisions in the pocket or outside of the pocket. Baker Mayfield, who isn't really, even though he tries to be, he isn't really the most mobile quarterback. The Baker Mayfield that isn't the most mature person. At least that's what they're saying. I've never met the person, but that's what every single person or every single organization or every single scout has said. And now you sit here today, and Baker Mayfield, who is a former number 1 overall pick, is in a and 6 years in the league is in a quarterback battle. And if you read reports, he's losing this battle to Kyle Trask. There's a reason why a lot of people have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers finishing near the bottom of the NFL, near the bottom of the league this year. It's not because of the players are older, but actually, let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. Baker Mayfield has been in the league. I said 6, right? Baker Mayfield has been in the league. Give me a second. Baker Mayfield. He's Caucasian, so he's not any of these African American guys. Baker Mayfield has not been in the league that long, actually. And Kyle Trask has been in the league for 3 years. Bona fide backup. And Baker Mayfield, who is the number 1 overall pick, has been in the league for 6 years. I was right. Sorry. What I'm saying is this. The reason why Baker Mayfield continues to keep getting these chances is because he was a former number 1 overall pick and he beat the Steelers in the playoffs. But what happened the next game when he played against, that Steelers team was good, but you still had a aging. In fact, I think wasn't that the last game Big Ben played? Or something like that? And then when you played a competent quarterback, a quarterback that wasn't on his last leg, and Patrick Mahomes, you got destroyed or you lost. And Patrick Mahomes got injured that game, and you lost to Chad Henne. I'm not going to say Baker Mayfield should retire. I will never call or end somebody's career before they wanted to, right? But what I will say is this. If Baker Mayfield loses this battle to Kyle Trask, it's going to be very tough for him moving forward. Because you went from a number 1 overall pick to not even being able to beat out Kyle Trask in a span of 6 years. And excuse my language, that bullshit excuse that they give Cam Newton is the same excuse that I'll give for Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield's brand is too big to be a backup quarterback. I don't think he views himself as a backup quarterback. And this is my thing. And I know you guys, some people hate it, but I always bring my examples back to basketball because that's what helps me understand it, what I'm talking about a lot more. You can't say that you're the best player on the court if you continuously lose to somebody. You can't say, and we can even bring it back to football, you can't say that this is a rivalry if you continuously lose to a player or to continuously lose to a team. You can't consider yourself a top tier player. You can't consider yourself a starting quarterback if you can't even be out Kyle Trask. Now, don't get me wrong. Shouts out to Kyle Trask. I'm not trying to crap on his name. Kyle Trask is in the NFL. I'm obviously not. He's good enough to be in the NFL. But Kyle Trask, at least in the 2 to 3 years he's been in the league, has been a bona fide backup. And you can't even win out when you're the only option that they really have outside of Kyle Trask. You can't even beat him out. And what it's looking like is you might become the starting quarterback because that's just a terrible look for a former number 1 overall pick. But if you do that and then you just look trash, your leash is so short because it's like, what's the point? This entire division, the NFC South, like I said, has a plethora of teams, and they benefit from having one of the easiest schedules outside of the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have to play Minnesota. They have to play the Eagles. They have to play the Lions that are incredibly better this year. They have to play the Buffalo Bills. They have to play the San Francisco 49ers. They have to play the Jacksonville Jaguars, who should be better. And I failed to mention that they have to play at San Francisco. They have to play at Buffalo. They have to play the Eagles at home, but it's still the Eagles. And it looks like that's Monday Night Football. I think that there was an episode way back where I talked about Kyrie Irving. And I talked about how fragile his career is right now if it doesn't work out next year for the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, everything that I said about Kyrie and being fragile, I mean that times 10 when we talk about Baker Mayfield. If Baker Mayfield can't even beat out, and no one expects the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to be successful this year because of their quarterback situation, who, by the way, let me not fail to forget, or let me not fail to remind you that Baker Mayfield is, or at least was, projected to be their starting quarterback. And they're expected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. But if you want to talk about fragile, if Baker Mayfield can't even beat out Kyle Trask, I don't know a home for him. Because I don't know another team that will look at him as a starting quarterback. So, I guess we'll see. Speaking of starting quarterback, this is an interesting year, and we're going to move on, obviously. This is an interesting year for the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, to me, remind me of the Houston Rockets. Incredible talent all over the place. But outside of course, them getting Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, there's a lot of youth on the Atlanta Falcons. A lot of players, in fact, that are under the age of 20. Damn, hold on. There's a bunch of players that are under the age of 26. In fact, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. 42 players under the age of 26 or under the age of 27. And a lot of those players are their most important players. We talk about Drake London. We talk about Kyle Pitts. Talk about Bijan Robinson. Lord, when we talk about their starting quarterback in Desmond Ridder, they have a young team. And it's not just them being A.J. Terrell. It's not just Jeff Okudah, who... That's another thing, bro. It looked like Jeff Okudah got carted off, and it says it could be an ankle. I pray that it's nothing serious. I know he came off of a, ACL thing with the Lions, so I hope that it's not that serious. I hope, But most of their players are young, very young. Kind of like the the Houston Rockets. I'm interested to see. We were able to get to see very, very, very quick glimpses of Desmond Ridder in the Netflix series Quarterback, because they followed Marcus Mariota, who is currently now the backup quarterback in Philly. But I'm interested to see, this is Desmond Ridder's first year going into the season as a starting quarterback. I understand that Taylor Heineke, he is the backup quarterback for Atlanta, but this is Desmond Ridder's team, and I am interested to see what this team looks like. I don't look. In sports, right? When you look at every successful team, age plays a part. And when you look, I mean, yeah, you have some good players like Jonnu Smith, but he didn't even work in New England, and he's 27. Trey Flowers is 28. Shouts out to Trey. Their defense to me is going to be a lot better. Bud Dupree is 30. Grady Jarrett, he's 30. So I think they're going to be better in on the defense side of the ball, and in some areas. Their oldest player is Cordell Patterson, and he's 32. I just don't know. I don't know. You're expecting a lot from a young player, and the thing that we know about young players in the NBA and in NFL is they're not used to winning. They don't know how to win on a bigger level. We're going to talk about that a lot more when we talk about the Carolina Panthers, but I'm interested to see what does. I don't expect much success from the Atlanta Falcons, but I do expect them to be a lot better than they've been, because you have Desmond Ridder, who, this isn't his first year, and you have Bijan Robinson, who is one of the highest paid running backs already, and he hasn't ran a down in the league. Again, this team is interesting, man. This team has it. I don't see I don't know how much success they're gonna have, even though you do have Arthur Smith, who, the jury is still out if he's a good coach or not, but we think they're a lot better than their record. Is just you're working with the players that you had. And honestly, last year you didn't have that bad of a record. You had a chance. There was a good part of the season, or there was a portion of the season where the Falcons were the number one team in the NFC South. So, and like I said about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the NFC South doesn't have that tough of a schedule. I mean, the toughest teams that the Falcons play is Green Bay, but we don't know how they look with Jordan Love. I think the Lions are going to be drastically better this year. So they play at the Lions. They play at Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. They play the Washington Commanders, but you really don't know what they're going to be with Sam Howell. Outside of that, you have Tennessee, you have Minnesota, but we don't know what Minnesota's going to look like. You have the Jets. That's probably going to be a loss. And the Bears, but we don't know what the Bears are going to look like. There's a lot of high hopes for Justin Fields, but we don't know. So I think that having a weaker schedule definitely helps the Falcons, but I don't expect much success from them. I do expect Desmond Ridder. We're going to know everything you need to know from Desmond Ridder this year if he's able to stay healthy, which, of course, I don't wish injury upon anybody. If Desmond Ridder can stay healthy for the entire season, we are going to see just how is he a quarterback, a starting quarterback that you can win with, or is he just a good serviceable backup? Now, again, when you have a younger squad, it's definitely beneficial to have a schedule this week. I mean, and you got to play the Colts. The Colts defense is good, but is Anthony Richardson going to be playing? I don't know. You don't know what's going to go in Minnesota, even though I do think that Kirk Cousins is underrated, even though I don't think Kirk Cousins is a quarterback that's really going to win you a Super Bowl. But outside of that, man, I'm interested. The Falcons have a lot of young question marks, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't, so let me explain. There is a lot of youth on the Falcons, and I don't expect them to reach their full potential this year. I expect them to be better than last year. I don't expect them to reach their full potential, obviously, because they're youth. But if this team is able, I kind of can see this team have a rise like the Miami Dolphins. Because Miami Dolphins were young for a while, too. And then they got, Tyreek Hill, but they still have Jalen Waddle. You still have Tua Tagovailoa. So I think that I don't know if maybe Drake London can become a top tier receiver. I don't know, but I need to see. I don't expect much from the Atlanta Falcons this year. I expect Arthur Smith. I think Arthur Smith is a good coach. I just need to see more. And I just don't think this year is going to be the year because of, again, they have over 40 players that's under the age of 27. So, and speaking of youth, the same can kind of be said for the Carolina Panthers. However, that is only really because of their let's say their starting quarterback. So they had the number one. They drafted Bryce Young at Alabama. I will say this, for a while now, man, this Carolina Panthers team has been good as far as the team. Now, it hasn't seen much success because of the quarterback play. You had Sam Darnold as your quarterback, and he got hurt. And you had PJ Washington or PJ Walker, as your quarterback, and he came from the XFL. No offense to him, but come on, bro. This team, kind of like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this team is good enough to make a lot of noise. You have Brian Burns, you have DJ Chalk, you have Jeremy Chin. You have really, really good people or pieces. This team, the only problem with this team, I'm not gonna say problem. The only question mark that you have, J.C. Horn, who's one of the best cornerbacks in football. The only thing I need to see about this team is how does Bryce Young look? I don't expect Bryce Young to come in and be a world beater from day one. I don't expect that at all. I don't expect Bryce Young, because again, you can be great in college, and we've seen that multiple times. We just talked about Tim Tebow. You can be great in college, but there's just a different college and professionals are completely different, and that's not just if we talk, okay, I'm gonna go back to basketball, but overseas there are teams that are overseas that are way better than college football or college basketball teams because those are professionals. So the NBA is drastically better than college basketball. The NFL is drastic. There's a reason why you have to stay in college football for, I think, 3 years before you even go to the league, because of how physical and how different and how much talent's in college football or in the NFL. So I don't expect Bryce Young to, be that dude from day one. I don't expect that. And I don't think that the Carolina Panthers should expect that either. I do think they have, Terrence Marshall's good. I expect them to be good. I just don't expect them to be great. I think that this team has a good shot of winning the division. That's how good this team is. It really is only predicated on Bryce Young. I know that the conversation, at least in the draft, was who was better between Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. I think that if we talk about ceilings wise and pure talent, I probably would go with C.J. Stroud. But if you talk about most NFL ready, I would go with Bryce Young. And that's what the Carolina Panthers did. Again, a soft schedule is very hard to say. It's very hard to tell how good a team is when you look at their schedule and they have a soft schedule. But a soft schedule does help younger players, and especially younger quarterbacks that have to play, that are starting off. So you have to play at the Giants, and they do have a good defense, but it's the Giants. And that's in the preseason. So I think that'll help as well. But in the regular season, your toughest games is Seattle, Minnesota, Detroit, Miami, Dallas, and that's about it. In Jacksonville in week 17. That's pretty much it. And honestly, your hardest games are pretty much before the bye week. Yeah, you have from week 3 to week 6, you play Seattle, Vikings, Lions, Dolphins, all those, and you play at Dolphins, at Detroit, and at Seattle. That's all tough. After that, then week 7 is the bye week. Week 8, you play the Texans, Colts, Bears. Again, Dallas is probably going to be a hard one. You don't know what's going to go with the Tennessee Titans, and that's about it outside of your divisional games. So, kind of like the Atlanta Falcons, I don't expect much success from the Carolina Panthers. What I will say is I do see this team, to me, at least for the team aspect, is good enough to win the division. It's just I need to see how good Bryce Young is going to be towards the end of the season. And it to me is really on his shoulders. And I'm not saying that to say like he has to carry the team, but this team is good. This team is a playoff team. It's just how good, that's only predicated on the quarterback. So we'll have to see. Stop me if you heard this before. The New Orleans Saints is a sleeper team. Stop me if you heard this before. The New Orleans Saints are going to make some noise, or they're going to be better than people think. Stop me if you heard this before. The New Orleans Saints possibly can make the NFC Championship. The same rhetoric and the same predictions, the same talk is around the New Orleans Saints year after year after year. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not one to shy away from that talk. I am probably one of the people that have fueled that talk. I thought Jameis Winston was going to be a lot better for the Saints than he was. Nobody really knows if and when we're going to get a consistently healthy Michael Thomas again. I know that Alvin Kamara, I think he's going to be suspended 3 games, but like I said, it's the Saints don't have that tough of a schedule outside the preseason. Don't have that tough of a schedule. There's always been buzz around the New Orleans Saints. And every single year, the New Orleans Saints is supposed to be that team that can make some noise. Now, don't get me wrong. The New Orleans Saints has a good roster. You have Jonathan Abrams, who I think they got from the Raiders. You have Derek Carr now, who we'll talk about in a second. You still have Demario Davis. I know that you signed Jimmy Graham again. I know Cam Jordan just signed an extension, so shouts out to him. And he's one of the best defensive players in the league. Like I said, he is suspended for 3 games, but you have Alvin Kamara. You have Lonnie Johnson. This team is going to be a very good. You still have Marshawn Lattimore. This team is going to be a very good. Tyrann Mathieu. I'm sorry. It's going to be a good team. This is a good team. This is a very good team. Um, and I'm not one to believe in I'm not one to believe in curses or voodoo or anything like that, but there has to be said the Saints have had some historically epic ways that their seasons have ended the last few years. I mean, you remember the pass interference that wasn't called against the Rams, the back and forth game between Drew Brees and Tom Brady, Jameis Winston getting hurt, pretty much their entire team getting hurt last year towards the end of the year. Michael Thomas again getting hurt again. Have Jamal Williams, who's really good. I'll say this, man. And I'll be the guy again. This Saints team, to me, there's no in between with this Saints team. And what I mean by that, to me, this team is going to be very good or they're going to be not good at all. I think that we've said from time to time, all Derek Carr needs is a competent wide receiver core and a really good offensive line. He never really had that at all in with the Raiders. Well, you have one of the best offensive lines in football in New Orleans, and you have, let's hope that, of course, Michael Thomas can stay healthy, but you have one of the best wide receiver cores in football with the Saints. I mean, let me see. You have, why am I forgetting? Why am I blanking on his name? Chris Olave, like you have Tre'Quan Smith. You have pieces, man. To me, the excuses that we have given Derek Carr is out the window now. You're in a new situation. You're in a better situation, a lot of people think. And you have a better defense. This team, I'm not going to say Super Bowl. But when we look at how weak the NFC is, this team should definitely be able to make some noise and should make some. I mean, when you put the teams up next to each other, this team can rival maybe a Dallas Cowboys. I don't think that this team is good enough at all to rival a Philly or rival a 49ers team, but I don't think that this team is that far removed from being that good. And I think that all the excuses that we've given Derek Carr will go out the window. So if you're successful, maybe it was the organization around him and the lack of competency and the lack of protection around Derek Carr when he was in Las Vegas or Oakland. But if he's not good and he's the same Derek Carr that throws head-scratching interceptions, it's like, all right, maybe it wasn't the organization. I'll say this. If I'm going to rank this division, right, as far as who is going to be the best and the worst, because of the entire team and because I still think Derek Carr is really good. Again, he's going to have to prove a lot to me, but I do think that he's good. And I think that there's a reason why he's one of the best quarterbacks in crunch time. I have the Saints number one. I have probably the Panthers number two because of their entire team. I do need to see a lot from Bryce Young, but I have the Panthers number two. Falcons number three. They're just a really, really young team. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number four because of their quarterback position. So that is the NFC South. Let me know who do you think is going to win the NFC South? Who do you think is going to be the best team, worst team? Who's going to be a sleeper out of this team or out of this division as far as players? Let me know. Leave it in the comments. We'll talk about it. Let's move forward. Okay, I'm going to talk about them for a little bit. Team USA and FIBA. For people that are confused, let me clarify some things. FIBA Team USA, when we talk about the World Cup and FIBA, is not the Olympics. Team USA. When we talk about this, there's two drastically different things. Team USA, when we talk about the Olympics, that's when you get the big boys come out. That's when we have the Redeem Team. That's when we have the guys come out for the Olympics. A lot of people, KDs and LeBrons, they come out for Team USA. That as far as the Olympics. When we talk about FIBA, while yes, it is important and you're going against the nation's other teams. The United States doesn't really take that as seriously as it does the Olympics, and you can tell by the people that they have. Let me just rattle off this team, the team that we have, the roster. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here crapping on this roster, but the roster that Team USA for the FIBA World Cup. We have Paolo Banchero, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Jaren Jackson Jr., Cam Johnson, Walker Kessler, Bobby Portis, and Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves. Now, Team USA doesn't take... Let me say some of the teams, some of the players in the NBA most of the players don't really take FIBA that seriously as much as they do the Olympics. Because, when you talk about the Olympics, that's when you'll get the Damian Lillards, the Steph Currys, even though Steph Curry hasn't really played in the Olympics because he was hurt and because he was winning championships. LeBron, Anthony Davis, KD, those type of players, they'll play in the Olympics. You can tell because the best player on this team is either Anthony Edwards, Brandon Ingram. Anthony Edwards or Brandon Ingram. I know Jaren Jackson Jr. is definitely important as far as defense, but this team is going to go as far as Anthony Edwards and Brandon Ingram take them. Yes, Jaylen Brown's really good. Yes, Mikal. This team is good. This team is of good players, but you're still going to get. Let me see. Let me just read off Team Canada for you guys, because Team Canada ain't playing. Team Canada's roster. What the world? All right, so Team Canada has some. All right, Team Canada's roster is Kyle Alexander, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I'll just name the NBA players. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, RJ Barrett, O'Shea Brissett, Dylan Brooks, Lou Dort, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Corey Joseph, Jamal Murray, Kelly Olynyk, Dwight Powell. They got some people, mostly the names that stick out to me is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray. Look, I'm not saying and Zach Edey. I apologize. He could have went number one or in the top 5 this year in the draft, but he stayed at Purdue. Team USA has not won the FIBA World Cup since 2014. They came in 7th place in 2019. That was the team that had Marcus Smart and Jason Tatum and that team. While Team USA in United States, I don't think take FIBA as seriously as other countries, it shows. France and Serbia beat them in 2019. Like, they're not playing no games. And France has a good. You have Rudy Gobert, who, And don't get me wrong, man. Like, I don't know if Giannis is playing, but I know Giannis is playing. I know Luka Doncic is going to play. I don't think that Nikola Jokic is playing. But Luka is playing. What I'm saying is I don't have high expectations for Team USA. Don't get me wrong. These are really good names, really good young names. Again, Paolo, Anthony Edwards, who's 21, Tyrese Halliburton, who just got a 5-year or his extension, Josh Hart, Jaren Jackson Jr., who just won Defensive Player of the Year, Cam Johnson, who is a sniper, Austin Reeves, who is like a sensation for the Lakers. They have good players. I just don't know how successful they're gonna be when you go up against, because basketball, especially when we talk about FIBA, you're playing against teams that have played with each other for years. And while the Olympics, it doesn't matter as much because we're bringing our top talent. And no offense to Team USA, this team, but this is not our top talent. Steph Curry's not playing. LeBron's not playing. KD's not playing. Kawhi Leonard's not playing. Paul George isn't playing. Damian Lillard's not playing. Like our top talent is not playing. James Harden's not playing. Kyrie Irving's not playing. So while some of the top talent, I don't think Joel Embiid is playing, but France is a tough team. Canada is a tough team. Canada's best player is playing. Shai Gilgeous, Luka Doncic is playing. So it's going to be interesting, man. But we will see. We will see. I wish nothing but the best for Team USA and FIBA, and hopefully I'm wrong and they bring home gold. So, and lastly, before we go, I want to send my congratulations and I want to send my shout out to Diana Taurasi for being the first WNBA player to reach 10,000 points. You have to understand, the WNBA has 12 teams. The WNBA has not been there for that long, and Diana Taurasi is 41. And the fact of, when we talk about GOATs and we talk about, the greatest women basketball player of all time, you hear Sue Bird, you hear Maya Moore, you hear Lisa Leslie. There's a reason why you also hear Diana Taurasi. She has been one of the most consistent players, and she has been one of the best players in WNBA history. When we talk, I always say this, when we talk about Hall of Fame, can you talk about a league? Can you talk about a sport without naming that person? And you have the full story. For instance, you can't talk about the NFL without naming Tom Brady. Because if you don't, you're leaving out arguably the greatest player of all time. You can't talk about basketball, talk about the NBA, and leave out LeBron James, or leave out Steph Curry, or leave out Michael Jordan, because you're leaving out an important part. When we talk about the WNBA, there's no way that you can explain the history of WNBA and leave out Diana Taurasi. She is one of the greatest players of all time. She was successful in UConn. She's been successful in the WNBA, and the WNBA would not be as popular and would not continue to grow in popularity if it wasn't for the greatness of Diana Taurasi. I understand that there are, Candace Parker's up there as well, and the ladies that I named, but this moment is for Diana Taurasi. I want to say shouts out to Diana Taurasi for being the first woman in WNBA history. I also want to say, do you realize the WNBA does not play as many games as the NBA? So there was a thing going around on social media. There's somebody at ESPN that made a stat that Alyssa Thomas, she became the first player in WNBA history to have 20, 15, and 10 game. And I think like 100 NBA players have done that. But I think I understand what they were trying to do, but it just landed wrong. They were trying to show that, while yes, it's common in the NBA, Alyssa Thomas is doing something that or did something that nobody has ever done in her sport. And that's what they were trying to highlight, even though it came off very poor. The WNBA plays a lot less games than the NBA. I think they play like 30 or 35 or something like that. The NBA plays 82. And on top of the NBA doesn't have to fight for nearly as much as the WNBA has to fight for. The WNBA has to fight for TV rights. They have to fight for their play. I mean, we. Do I want to go in this? Do I want to go in this soapbox, Jalen? Do I want to? I'll do it. The WNBA players have to fight. There's a reason why a lot of players have to go overseas to play basketball when the season's over. A lot of WNBA players do not get off seasons because they can't afford to have an off season with the type of money and the type of salaries that they get from the WNBA. They still do not have chartered flights for the entire season. There's still a chance if you leave right now and go to a flight that you'll see a WNBA team. That is crazy to me. The WNBA does not have to fight for nearly the same rights, nearly the same respect as the NBA has to fight for, which I understand when we talk about revenue and we talk about popularity and bringing things in, but this is still a sport. This is a sport that people are funding. So for the people that like to shit on the WNBA and like to throw dirt on it and say that these people are trash, these are the same people that do not have 10,000 points anywhere. So I say all that to say, when you want to look, because I did this too. I did this as well. I was like, damn, 10,000 points ain't that much, especially when we look. But I'm comparing it to a league. I'm comparing that to the NBA, who plays 82 games a year or 82 games a season. So this is Diana Taurasi's moment. Shouts out to Diana Taurasi for becoming the first WNBA player to reach 10,000 points. Well deserved. You are considered, and you probably are, the greatest WNBA player of all time, possibly. But you have the resume to that is that is second to none. So shouts out to Diana Taurasi. This is her moment. Congrats to you. And that has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I was going to talk about Lionel Messi, but we'll save that for a different episode. I appreciate you guys. If you want a Popular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link in the description below. At multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. It definitely means a lot to me. Please subscribe to YouTube. Please subscribe to wherever you're listening. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and I pretty much post content every day on the YouTube, whether that's clips, whether that's episodes, whether that's reels, or shorts. I do that, and I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. I am so close. I am almost 100 away. I think I'm about 120 away. Anything will help. I definitely appreciate it. Please subscribe to the socials. Subscribe to Instagram. Subscribe to Twitter. TikTok. I post the shorts, and I post things daily, or pretty much daily is there as well. It definitely mean a lot to me. I'm trying to grow those as well. If you get a comment, the comment is from me. I'll ask that you keep it respectful. I understand if you don't agree with my opinion. Understand. You want to voice your opinion, please do so. You're welcome to do so. Just please keep it respectful. Yeah, man. And until next time, much love.